Hi, Bible students. Welcome to our last in our series of classes on the book of Habakkuk, the Old Testament prophet, one of the minor prophets, but only minor because it's one of the shorter of the prophets that are recorded for us. And we're going to finish up that study tonight. This will be our fourth study, and then our next study will be from the book of Colossians. And the title of those lessons will be Jesus Christ, the image of the invisible God. That will be in Colossians for the next 8 weeks. But tonight we finish up Habakkuk, I think, with a bang. Gives us a couple of great things to think about as we really hone in on what Habakkuk's message is. Doesn't take long to say what Habakkuk's been talking about in the first two chapters of this 3-chapter book. The first two chapters have been a dialogue between Habakkuk and God, and Habakkuk is complaining. Habakkuk has a grievance with God. Says you're not answering our prayers. We're having problems. We're almost doomed not to survive, and we're having difficulty, Lord. And I pray, and you're not there. And God basically says, well, you're right about all the evil that's going on in Judah. You're right. In fact, there really wasn't any way that at this point in history that Judah could recover itself. This is probably 20 years before the Babylonian exile. So Babylon didn't look as much like a threat as it might have, but still, the Lord was raising Babylon up to inflict punishment and discipline on the people of God. And although the fate of Judah was in God's hands, Habakkuk had a sense of the enormity of the tragedy that was about to happen. And so he was crying out to God, Lord, please help. And God basically in answer says, you're right. You're right. The things that are going to happen are going to be terrible. And you need to hang in there and be patient. That's pretty much it, because God doesn't give him a reason for the suffering. And God doesn't promise that he's going to take away the suffering. He just promises, well, in this chapter, you find out what he promises. We're in Habakkuk chapter 3, and it says, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet on Shigionoth. I probably didn't pronounce that right. It's a Hebrew word. Its meaning is uncertain, but it's also used in the 7th Psalm. In Psalm 7, in the introduction, it speaks of it being a lament. So I'm thinking, and some other Bible scholars think, that this is a lament that Habakkuk is sharing as to the coming exile of the Babylonians upon the people of Judah. Let's pick it up at verse 2. Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them in our day. In our time make them known. In wrath remember mercy. Please, Lord, remember what you did before. He says, and this is so well put, repeat, I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them in our day. I love that. God is capable. And so a study of God's history with people is instructive to the present, because it means that God is capable and may do that very thing which he has done before. Verse 3, God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. His splendor was like the sunrise. Rays flashed from his hand where his power was hidden. Plague went before him. Pestilence followed his steps. He stood and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The ancient mountains crumbled, and the age-old hills collapsed. But he marches on forever. Remember what God has done in the past, and what Habakkuk does is, in a very poetic way, tells the story of the Egyptian deliverance, which is the key story of deliverance in all of the Old Testament. As Jesus delivers us by the cross, so the primary story in the Old Testament was the deliverance of the Israelite slaves from Egypt to enter the Promised Land. That is the story. It talks about God bringing plagues and pestilence. God came from Teman the Holy One from Mount Paran. I wanted to know about that, so I did a little extra looking. Teman and Paran were a couple of cities that were over on the other side of the Jordan River. It's called the Transjordan, which is it's way east. So the picture is that God came from the east, from the sunrise, to Egypt, which is in the very northeast corner of Africa. He came from the east and he rescued Egypt, or rescued Israel from Egypt. And that's the story that is being told in a very poetic way. So what he says is God, you showed up before. We just want you to do that again as you did back then. And that's the first thing you do when you deal with suffering. You go back through your life and you think about the times when God has helped you. What's God done in your life? That's a question that each one of us can answer. There are a few common answers: salvation and forgiveness of sins and strength when we needed it and comfort. But all those unique things that come into our lives that God has helped us with, can you think of times that the Lord has delivered you? Can you remember what God has done to make things right in your life? When has God really showed up? Can you tell us? Saved the day, saved your life maybe? Remember this, you stake your joy right there on what God has done for you. God's dependability, his trustworthiness. If you are in a time of suffering and difficulty and you say, I don't know where God is right now, he's not answering my prayer, you remember what God has done. That makes all the difference. His love has not lapsed. He is the same God who rescued you, who blesses you, who's delivered you, who has forgiven you and loved you and comforted you. That's the same God. His love has not gone away. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Just don't forget what God has already done in your life. Other than the resurrection of Jesus, I think the deliverance of Israel from Egypt was the greatest of all the signs that God has ever shown. And what Habakkuk was remembering was all of that. The same God who delivered Israel is the same God who will help them survive exile and punishment. So now, remember that. Let's go to verse 16 in chapter 3. I heard and my heart pounded, my lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones and my legs trembled. Yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. The calamity of the nation coming to invade us. He's seeing beyond the exile. He's already been revealed that Judah will be punished with exile. But he says, but I want to see and wait patiently for the calamity you're going to bring on those who are going to inflict punishment upon us. Verse 17, though the fig tree does not bud and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer, and he enables me to tread on the heights. The second thing you do when you reach a time of suffering, you remember what God's done for you in the past. And remember, you can ask for him to do the same again. Just remember God's dependability. But secondly, you rejoice anyway. In the midst of your suffering, you rejoice anyway. Because we find joy in God our Savior. Our joy is not found in the circumstances of today. Our joy is found in what God has done, is doing, will do, and who he is right now, and how he's brought you this far. He is able to provide you with power to walk the heights, the high places, to walk the mountains, and to make your feet swift and strong, even when it seems like you want to go slow. There's a popular TV show called America's Got Talent. Last year, they had a young lady by the name of Jane Marszewski that was about 30 years old. She was on the program. She took the stage name Nightbird, and she became practically famous overnight. she performed a song that she called It's Okay. It's her own right. It's her own lyric, her own music. And Simon Cowell, who is the guy, he's kind of the grouch, the critical, gruff fellow, the negative judge, he pushed the gold button after a time and advanced her to the final round of the competition. Here's some of the lyrics of her song, which are, again, it's poetry. I moved to California in the summertime. I changed my name thinking that it would change my mind. I thought that all my problems, they would stay behind. I was a stick of dynamite, and it was a matter of time. Oh, dang, oh my, now I can't hide. Said I knew myself, but I guess I lied. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay if you're lost. We're all a little lost, and it's all right. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. If you're lost, we're all a little lost, and it's all right. I wrote 100 pages, but I burned them all. I blow through yellow lights and don't look back at all. Yeah, you can call me reckless. I'm a cannonball. Don't know why I take the tightrope and cry when I fall. She was she was nominated to go to the finals directly from there with the gold button that Simon had pushed, but she was not able to make it. She had metastatic breast cancer when she sung that song that had spread to her liver, lungs, and throughout her body. And her husband had just left her. Why is Nightbird's song one we need to listen to? Maybe we need to hear, it's okay, it's okay, it's all right. We're all a little lost, and it's all right, it's okay. She had 3 dreams on 3 straight nights of a bird singing in the night, in the darkness. And so she took the stage name Nightbird because of those dreams. She believed God sent those dreams to her. She said, I want to be that way even when I'm in the middle of a dark time and there are no signs that it will end, she said. I want to be the bird that sings in anticipation of the good things that I trust are coming. And she wrote this while suffering with the side effects of chemo and cancer. She wrote one blog and entitled it, God is with us on the bathroom floor, because she had been so very ill during her chemo and her cancer. And Nightbird died this week at the age of 30. But she found that unexplainable peace that comes in God and in Him alone. She once said on camera, she said, if we wait for just good things to happen to us, we'll never be joyful. Wow. We don't have to wait till things are all right, till things are perfect. It's okay now. It's all right now. And particularly, it's all right if God is your Savior. I appreciate you joining us for this study. We'll pick up with Colossians next week. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.